Hi, welcome back to Reading Pathways, and welcome back to the floor with me as I continue the Establishing a Reading Baseline tour of my bookshelves and continue with part two of science fiction and fantasy. And those happen to be low down on this bookshelf over here, so apologize for the crouching and the straining. But yeah, I figured I would try to loop shelves 2 and 3 of fantasy and sci-fi together and see if I could just speed through these a little bit quicker than usual. Um, and then that will complete sci-fi and fantasy. These are the last of those shelves in here. So yeah, let's jump into it without further ado and start looking through the books. So I'm going to try to group things together as much as possible to the extent that they are series and relate to each other. So the first thing I grabbed here is 3 from Terry Pratchett's Discworld. So Equal Rights, Weird Sisters, and Masquerade. So Weird Sisters I've had for a while, and I always thought, well, it's one of the witch-related books from Discworld, but I think it falls later in the series after the witches are already introduced. But then luckily recently I found Equal Rights, which I think is the introduction to the witch characters, I believe. And then I also found Masquerade the same day, and I'm not sure if this involves the witches as well, but yeah, I think Discworld, as far as I know, it doesn't necessarily matter where you start or what order you go in, but I have pulled together 3 of those, so those will be good. And then 3 other smaller little paperbacks that I shoved into the shelf there. So I have Robert Silverberg with Conquerors from the Darkness. They came from the stars to claim the vanquished Earth. Kind of a Viking-looking guy on the cover there with some other Viking-looking dudes with long hair. I'm not really sure. The Earth has been transformed into a watery breeding ground for mutants and dreaded alien star beasts. The true humans are confined to island reservations. But one landsman, Devere Stargan, is determined to become a Sea Lord. So yeah, only Robert Silverberg I have. I know he's sort of like essential reading for vintage sci-fi from that time period. So I did grab one from him. Another sort of classic sci-fi, supposedly a must-read, is Flowers for Algernon. And this is not the best copy of this, but I think I found this for 50 cents or something. So yeah, this is supposed to be pretty sad, I think. I know people usually say they shed some tears to this one, so looking forward to that one. And then another beaten up copy here. I'll try to see if I can find a better one maybe, but I did want to grab this when I saw it out there one day. Neuromancer by William Gibson, winner of the Hugo, Nebula, and Philip K. Dick Awards, and I think this is kind of a classic sci-fi. A lot of these I think could be considered classic fantasy, sci-fi, major series, major authors that I've heard about. Like I said, with this whole series, including fiction and other things I've gone over so far, trying to just accumulate a wide swath of things that are basically well talked about, well regarded, to try to establish this sort of reading baseline for myself in these genres. So, all right, so now going straight across, I have some book ones in some chunky, big fantasy and sci-fi book series that I've heard lots of good things about. So, John Gwynne Malice, book 1 in The Faithful and the Fallen. I think this is his debut series. I know he has a more recent series where it's like The Fury of the Gods, everything like that. I'm not sure the name of the series in that one, but this is what started it for John Gwynne, I think. So I've heard a lot of good things about him. Let's see if I can replace these as I go, hopefully. This is not a book 1, a book 2, but I have The Dark Forest, Chi Jin Liu, book 2 in The Death's End, which started with the 3-body problem. I listened to 3-body problem this year on audiobook, and I didn't love the audiobook listening experience so much. I'm still getting used to that. I think I haven't done too many novels in audio, but as far as the content of the book, it was definitely interesting, and I stuck with it to the end. So with book 2, I think what I plan to do is, never tried this yet, but I think with this one I'm going to do a combo deal where I'm going to read from this, but also listen to audio which is available to me at the same time. So I'll jump back and forth, and I'll get parts of it from the novel in print form and parts of it from the audio version. And, that'll help me get through it quicker, but also could be enjoyable to kind of do that hybrid reading experience. So I'm going to try that. All right. Put this one back, and then a major book one here, book one of The Wheel of Time. So The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. A couple bargain stores had a limited run on these where recently they were selling these for like $3. These new reprints in the tour, this uniform set here. It was really only book one as far as I could tell, but I did stumble across this for like $3, and it was a new copy of this. So yeah, nice and chunky. Heard tons and tons about The Wheel of Time, so I'll be able to start that one now. Another book one in a well-regarded series, Leviathan Wakes, James S.A. Corey. Book one of The Expanse, which I think is like a 10-plus sci-fi epic series. I think James S.A. Corey is a pseudonym for, it's a combination of, it's a dual author series, I believe, a team, about a space opera kind of thing. And so, heard a lot about that. And then another famous book one I've heard tons about, Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Found this, nice oversized floppy trade paperback of it. It's supposed to be pretty dark and harrowing fantasy here. And then a long time after I grabbed that one, I also found this one, book two, The Wise Man's Fear. The King Killer Chronicle is what it's called. And this is day two. So I guess book one might take place over a day, and book two might take place over another day. But yeah, so these are definitely talked about frequently. And then another one, I'm going to group all these together. I started finding the Dark Tower series books out there when I was starting to put together this collection. So we have The Gunslinger, which is Dark Tower book one. And this is illustrated by Michael Whalen. I found the first four in the Dark Tower in these Plume illustrated copies. So I was kind of on the lookout for those when I saw them, but they have like the awesome color illustrations in there. I dabbled in Stephen King a little bit when I was younger, but nothing in the Dark Tower series. So this is totally new to me. So there's the drawing of the three. This one was a little bit rough. I had to do a tape job on this one to try to keep it together. But again, same edition here with like the color illustration. So I think that should add to the reading experience. I found a much nicer copy of book three, The Wastelands. Basically perfect condition on this one. And then same can be said for book four, Wizard and Glass. And I mean, this is the behemoth of the series. This is the major chunker, I think, and maybe like the pivotal midpoint of the series. I know it goes beyond these four, obviously, but I think I've heard the most about Wizard and Glass. I've heard some positive, some negative, but this is sort of like the pinnacle of the series, I think, from what I've heard, and definitely curious about it. And then another book one of a sci-fi space opera series I've heard a lot about is Adrian Tchaikovsky. This one's Children of Time, which is book one. This won the Arthur C. Clarke Award. Book one of, I don't know exactly the series title of this, but I think it's Children of Time and then something else of time. So, I was happy to find that one. All right, now I have like a little stack going vertically over here. So to Gene Wolfe, I had been on the lookout for the Book of the New Sun. So this is, I found this combo of book one and two in the Book of the New Sun, and this is Shadow and Claw. So I believe it's made up of the Shadow of the Torturer and the Claw of the Conciliator. Volumes 1 and 2. So really happy I found this at a thrift store. I'll have to take a look for book, I think it's 3 and 4, I guess, would complete the Book of the New Sun. But this one was in great shape. Before I found this one, this is the one from Gene Wolfe I had always kept my eyes open for. A bookstore I go to occasionally one day had like an outdoor sale thing set up with like dollar books. And I found Peace by Gene Wolfe, which I think outside of the Book of the New Sun, I've heard seems to be his other most highly regarded work. I have heard some people actually say that piece might be even an underrated like masterpiece of his, kind of. So I was happy to find that. Definitely worthy of the dollar sale. It's a little eaten up in the corners and slightly beat up, but I don't see Gene Wolfe out there used very often in these type of books. So that was couldn't pass that one up. And then let's just do 3 standalone books here. So The Last Unicorn, Peter S. Beagle. Found this at a library that I check sometimes for sale books, and yeah, it's a nice reprint from Ace. I think it came out in the 70s, I want to say 68, 1968. I really didn't know about this before book 2, but I started hearing about it a lot on fantasy channels and stuff, and it's supposed to be one of the classic fantasy works of the last, 50 or 60 years. So yeah, this has a new introduction by Patrick Rothfuss, who I showed before. Nice blurb from Ursula K. Le Guin. So this seems to be a really loved book. So I'm curious about that. This one I haven't heard much about, Robo-Apocalypse by Daniel H. Wilson. National bestseller. Yeah. Terrifying tale of humanity's desperate stand against a robot uprising. So I think this might be a movie tie-in because there's like a scene on the back here that might be from a movie or a show or something. But this was just, at one of those sales I check, and, I was building up the sci-fi collection at that point. Really don't know much about it, but Alien Uprising, always entertaining. And then this Legends and Lattes, Travis Baldree. I'm curious about this series from him. This is the beginning of these, I think. I don't know if they're all connected, but it's basically supposed to be sort of like cozy fantasy, I guess. Seen it on TikTok and seen it other places. But I have heard, people, all different types of readers of fantasy say that, these are nice. Sometimes these are a little break from the grim dark, and they can be a little bit more uplifting and a little more cozy. So this was sitting at a library for $1, and it was pretty much perfect new condition. And so I've been curious about what these are all about. And then I have 2 from the Ann Leckie from the Imperial Rack universe. So Ancillary Justice, which I read earlier this year, and then I actually just finished recently Ancillary Sword, which was book 2. I talked about that. So book 3 is Ancillary Mercy, which I don't have, but I have Providence. And this is a standalone. It's an enthralling standalone novel of power, theft, and privilege set in the Imperial Rack world. So I liked the series enough, when I saw this at a library sale or a thrift store or something, to grab it and continue reading this universe. So yeah, Providence, a little bit longer than this is 430 plus pages, so a little chunkier than the typical books in the Ancillary series, but definitely curious to see how that goes. And then 3 more titles here on the bottom shelf, and then I'll move up to the next one. I would say all these are just stone cold classic titles that I've just heard are must-reads from almost everyone. So Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller. Classic bestseller and a landmark of 20th century literature. So not a perfect copy, but pretty darn good for $1 at a library, and a couple annotations in here a little bit, but basically good to go. So sort of spiritual, religious related writing, I think, but in a fantasy sense, or a sci-fi sense, I guess. But yeah, I'm definitely curious about that. Always have been. And then I found Hyperion, Dan Simmons, in this nice trade paperback reprint. Yeah, winner of the Hugo Award. It's a classic sci-fi title that I've just heard about for many years. I think if I am thinking of the right book, there's sort of like a structure of this that's similar to the Canterbury Tales, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll have to maybe brush up on how to read this one best. It might be a little complex, I've heard, but perfect condition on this, and yeah, excited to read that. And then, of course, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I've seen lots of quotes from it. I've read little snippets here and there and heard lots of praise of it, but never actually read it. So yeah, found a nice copy of this. Pretty short, and hopefully when this gets chosen as my next book, it'll be a quick one, but hopefully a good one. All right, let's jump to the top shelf now. So before I get this next shelf of fantasy sci-fi is the most like author driven, like a collection of some authors I've got. But before getting to those, there's a few more just standalone ones. So I have book one of Malazan by Stephen Erickson, and it's Gardens of the Moon. This is one of the more recent finds I just found the other day. Always on the lookout for book ones in classic series and major, authors that I've heard a lot about, and this would definitely qualify as one of those. So I've heard that it's very complex and complicated and a bit of a tough read to get used to the world and the writing style, but I'm definitely interested in it. And this is a Tale of Malazan, Book of the Fallen, book one. So yeah, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting size. It's not a trade paperback, it's more of a mass market, but it's not tiny. It's actually pretty nice and floppy, and it's thick, but nice little compact version of it. So that'll be interesting. Hopefully I can make sense of it. I've heard it's a little challenging, but all right, let's grab a couple of these out now. So just a moment, and then I'll just save a couple author collections for the end. So a few more standalones. This is Terry Brooks with The Sword of Shannara, and it's a massive brick of a mass market paperback, but it's in perfect condition. I found it at a little free library, and yeah, it's 700 plus pages, but I believe this is the beginning of I don't know, it was a tiny library. I guess that's where I found it. The first volume of the classic series that has become one of the most popular fantasy tales of all time. So yeah, this is a big, huge book one, but I was happy to find this. And I've seen the Shannara books all over the place since I've grabbed this. I don't know how many there are in the series. I think there's quite a lot, but I'll be starting with this one, as you should. And then this I found a long time ago. I've had this for a while. Haven't got to it yet, but I recognize the name. At the time, I was sort of more of a novice with BookTube and wasn't even that much aware of the big fantasy series that were out there, but I still did recognize the name Robin Hobb. And so I found Ship of Magic in this mass market paperback, and yeah, have since come to learn of the sort of prominence of Robin Hobb in the fantasy landscape, but also, let's see, the Book Exchange, Raleigh, North Carolina. Once upon a time, this book lived there. But yeah, book one of the Live Ship Traders, which I think is her series on the ocean and on this fantasy world of out on the seas, and with living ships, I believe, or ships that are alive in some sense. And I've heard some mixed things, but more good than bad, certainly. It's the Assassin's Quest, and the Assassin series is her more famous, I think. But I'm looking forward to this one. And then let's finish up. So the following, the rest of the shelf here is all three authors. So let's start with George R.R. Martin. So basically, I'm reading A Song of Ice and Fire right now. So this year was a big year for A Song of Ice and Fire for me. I finished Clash of Kings right at the beginning of the year. Then I moved to A Storm of Swords. Springtime, I think. And last year I read Game of Thrones. So I have Game of Thrones in this show tie-in edition. And then I finished this one right at the beginning of this year, Clash of Kings. I've thrown together a mishmash of editions of these, which is kind of fun for me. I kind of have fun sometimes just finding whatever editions I have and not worrying about the uniformity of the set. But I needed A Storm of Swords to continue the series, so I found this, which is one of these broken up versions of the books. I think the whole series actually exists in this format. This is part one, Steel and Snow, of A Storm of Swords. So I bought this for $1 at a library, and then I began reading Storm of Swords out of this, and I read the first half, obviously, here. And then I don't have part two in that series, and I haven't found like a standalone Storm of Swords in an acceptable copy to grab, so I went ahead and finished Storm of Swords from the library. I just took out the full book from the library and and finished it up. And then I also finished Feast for Crows this year, in like the fall time, but I accidentally left that book outside and it got saturated with rain, so I had to get rid of that one. So I'll replace that when I find a good copy. But yeah, so that leaves me with this is what I'm up to now. So I'm up to Dance with Dragons, which is the final book of the series that's out to this point. Obviously, we're all still waiting for the day to come when George R. R. Martin completes this series with his next books, if he does. But I still haven't read Dance with Dragons. So I found this perfect condition hardcover for $1 at a library sale. Just continues to amaze me. This is a $35 hardcover book. So I'm ready to go with this. I'm going to read it out of this. Probably I won't get to it this year. Probably I'll start next year probably with that. And then since I've been enjoying Song of Ice and Fire and I've enjoyed George R. R. Martin's style and writing, since then I found a couple other oddities from him that I've grabbed. So Tough Voyaging. Long before Game of Thrones became an international phenomenon, George R. R. Martin had taken his loyal readers across the cosmos, and they reprinted this. Obviously, they reprinted it in a way that makes it look like Game of Thrones, so that your eyes go right to it and you think it's Game of Thrones, but it's, I don't remember this character from Song of Ice and Fire. But anyway, I like George R. R. Martin, and he's one of those authors now that when I see something, I tend to grab it. And this originally came out in 1986. So yeah, he was doing these sci-fi type books back in the day, I think, before he went to the Song of Ice and Fire world. And then I found this one too, Dying of the Light. I've never really heard of this or seen a copy or anything, but let's see. This, I guess, is more fantasy than sci-fi, I think. A whispered jewel summoned him to Warlorn and a love he thought he'd lost. Caught up in a dangerous triangle, Gwen is in need of Dirk's protection. Yeah, I won't bore you with the whole summary, but I don't know anything about it, other than it's George R. R. Martin, and it came out in 1990. So, oh no, I'm sorry, 1977. Wow. Yeah, so this is old George R. R. Martin for sure, with this nice new reprint of it. It's science fiction, I guess, but that's all I know. And then topping off the George R. R. Martin, Fire and Blood. So I watched the show. What is it called? House of Dragons, I think, where they go over the Targaryens. In the House of Dragons, that could be the wrong title, I'm not sure, but that show is based on Fire and Blood, which is the backstory of the Targaryen dynasty in Song of Ice and Fire. And yeah, I found this nice volume of this. I believe it's illustrated, if I remember. Yeah. So whenever the show kicks back up with House of the Dragon, I will keep going with the show. I did like what I watched so far, and I will read the history of it at some point. So I got that one. Okay, moving to another author collection here. Not too many really, but so last year I read Ender's Shadow, which is a retelling of Ender's Game, but from the perspective of Bean, who's one of the other little kids on the ship. And I loved this, I really did. So that got me interested in going back and reading the whole Ender series. So I have the box set of the mass market paperbacks here of the first 4 Ender books. So Ender's Game, Speaker for the Dead. Speaker for the Dead seems to be so loved, and you can tell it is here with this really beaten up copy of this, which maybe if I find better ones of these, I'll grab them, but I wanted to have these available to go through the series. Then there's Children of the Mind and Xenocide. So we have those 4 in the Ender series. And then this one is The Last Shadow, and this is the continuation of the Shadow portion of the series. So that's really the only thing I've read is Ender's Shadow. But the series continues from Orson Scott Card with The Last Shadow. And I think it's the direct sequel to Ender's Shadow, but I'm got to look at that. I'm not positive. But there's a whole additional Shadow series on top of the Ender series. So I'm working on sort of collecting these because I really loved Ender's Shadow, and I know I'm going to love Ender's Game then, because it's basically the same-ish book, but from a different perspective. yeah, so that's Orson Scott Card. And then finally, last author batch here is for Connie Willis. And I've only read 2 of them, but the reason I started grabbing Connie Willis is because of this book, Passage. And I read this a long time ago, probably in my teenage years. And for many years, I didn't read very much. And I'm getting back to that now, luckily. But this book always stuck in my mind. I loved it when I was younger. I finally found a nice copy of it last year, I think, to have it on the shelf. And once I get through this Establishing a Reading Baseline series, which could be years from now, who knows when it will be, maybe I won't wait that long. But as far as rereads go in my collection, this is candidate probably number 1 to reread, because I just remember loving everything about this. And it kicked off, you know, me looking for Connie Willis every chance I've gotten in the last year or 2 when I've been trying to haul some books. So Passage I would definitely recommend. And then as far as the other Connie Willis I read earlier this year, Lincoln's Dreams, which was interesting. I mean, it's an earlier book from her, and it dealt with Civil War researchers, kind of like having, one of them was having these visions and dreams, and felt like they were inhabiting the mind of Robert E. Lee. I think it's a bit weird it's called Lincoln's Dreams, because in the end it was Robert E. Lee's dreams really that were relevant, but you know, either way, Lincoln, you know, plays a role anyway. And so they go on this sort of quest to these Civil War destinations and battlefields, and they kind of try to recreate the scenes, and but also like figure out why she's having these visions from like a mental perspective. But yeah, it was pretty good. It was definitely not on the level of Passage, I wouldn't say, but you know, still solid, and I'm glad that I'm continuing with Connie Willis. And speaking of which, the rest of these are Connie Willis that I have found. So this is a more recent one from her. It is from let me see if I can just quickly find the, okay, yeah, 2010, and this is Blackout. Oxford in 2060 is a chaotic place with scores of time-traveling historians being sent into the past. So this is a duology, I think. There's Blackout, and then there's, what's the other one? All Clear. I don't know which one comes first. I have to look before I read this one if All Clear has to be read first. No, I think it might be second. But yeah, it's about time-traveling historians, which may be, you know, kind of similar to Lincoln's Dreams, which had historians as the main characters, basically. But this is more futuristic. So we'll see about that. And then I found this at a library sale, perfect condition hardcover of Impossible Things, which is a story collection from Connie Willis. And it's got about 10 stories almost, it looks like. The Last of the Winnebagos is one I've definitely heard of. At the Rialto is the last one in here, which I've also heard of. So story collection from Connie Willis. And then 2 short little ones from her, Uncharted Territory, kind of a funny old vintage sci-fi kind of cover with a dinosaur type creature. This is older from her. I think this is, well, it's 1994, so maybe not. She's got older ones than that, but Uncharted Territory, and then also Bellwether. I think this might be 4 stories in here, if I'm not mistaken. This might be another short story collection, but I'll have to see. No, maybe not. It just starts with beginning and then gets going. So yeah, this could just be a standalone, but that's that. And then to finish off these shelves and finish off Connie Willis, 2 that are sort of related. So To Say Nothing of the Dog is, let's see, Ned Henry is badly in need of arrest. He's been shuttling between the 21st century and the 1940s, searching for a Victorian atrocity called the Bishop's Bird Stump. He must jump back to the Victorian era to help Verity put things right, not only save the project, but prevent altering it history itself. So yeah, more time travel books from Connie Willis. And I think that To Say Nothing of the Dog, I believe, is sort of part and parcel with Doomsday Book. And this is one of the best finds I've probably ever had at library hunts, book sale hunts and stuff. It's a perfect condition, nice wrapped up hardcover of Doomsday Book, which I've heard is her best book. I've heard is not only her best book, but I've heard many times that this is, one of the best sci-fi books people have ever read. It's from 1992. And yeah, I've been on the hunt for Connie Willis, and I've been probably most interested to read this book at some point. And I have a beautiful condition copy of it, so I'm very much looking forward to checking out Doomsday Book. And I don't think it has to be read in any order, with To Say Nothing of the Dog. I think they're separate books, but they share a common theme of time travel, and I don't know if characters repeat, but definitely themes. She does a lot of time travel writing, I think. So yeah, that's it. That's shelves 2 and 3 and the final shelves of fantasy and sci-fi. So I will hopefully continue this series next time with moving up this bookshelf to a classic shelf, sort of modernish classics, but mixed with older ones too. So we'll start going with some classics next time. But yeah, thanks for watching, and hope to be back with more updates soon.